First Contact, the new exchange program. From a story, when Deathworlders brought their companions to class, aliens were horrified. The Galactic Concorde's Interstellar University floated serenely in high orbit over the gas giant Trinvos 6. To most species in the galaxy, it was a beacon of shared knowledge and peaceful coexistence. To the humans who had only recently joined the Concorde, it was a test, an opportunity to prove that they belonged among the stars. Professor S.H. Tari clicked his mandibles nervously as he reviewed the enrollment roster. The Deathworlders, humans from Sol 3, had signed up in record numbers for the advanced xenobiology course. That in itself wasn't unusual. The humans were intellectually aggressive, curious, and adaptable. What worried him wasn't their enthusiasm, it was their biology. Or more specifically, the biology of their homeworld. Earth had been classified as a Class 12 death world, a designation shared by only a handful of known planets. Hostile terrain, frequent natural disasters, apex predators with adaptive intelligence, and an ecosystem seemingly designed to kill anything that moved. S.H. Tari had reviewed the documentation. The images of alligators, tigers, grizzly bears, and mosquitoes still gave him night tremors. And the humans lived there. Despite that, or perhaps because of it, the humans had integrated rapidly. They socialized well, participated often, and even organized group study sessions with other species. Some even attempted to learn the clicking syntax of his own language, which was flattering if occasionally unintelligible. It was during one such session, while reviewing the curriculum, that a human named Jackson raised a hand. "Professor, I notice we have Bring Your Companion Day scheduled in 2 weeks. That's still happening." S.H. Tari's antennae twitched in recognition. "Yes, Student Jackson. That event remains on the syllabus. Each student is encouraged to bring a companion animal representative of their homeworld. This helps promote empathy and interspecies understanding." Jackson grinned, that broad, toothy expression that other students had slowly come to accept as benign. "Cool. You sure you want us humans to bring ours?" S.H. Tari paused. That question was loaded. "We encourage participation from all species. The guidelines specify non-aggressive, domesticated organisms only." Jackson gave a thumbs up, another gesture that baffled S.H. Tari, and scribbled a note on his datapad. S.H. Tari didn't like the look in his eye, nor did he like the ripple of excitement that passed through the other humans in the class. There was whispering, laughter, and more of those grins. Something was coming. 2 weeks passed. On the morning of Companion Day, the classroom buzzed with anticipation. Students from over a dozen species arrived early, eager to introduce their native creatures. Yolanthians carried gentle ribbon serpents that shimmered with emotional feedback. Navarkians floated in with their jelly sacks that pulsed soothing pheromones into the air. A Frelk student brought an entire terrarium of soft-bellied burrowers who glowed in rhythm with his heartbeat. All was calm, peaceful, controlled. Then the humans arrived. The first through the door was Sarah, a second-year medical student from New Houston. She was accompanied by a towering, furred quadruped with pointed ears and a focused stare. Its tail wagged lazily behind it as it sniffed the air. The creature wore a harness with a name tag, Max. Its mouth hung open in a pant, exposing rows of sharp teeth. Several alien students recoiled. One of the smaller mollusk species pressed itself flat to the wall and emitted a high-pitched distress tone. "Relax, he's just excited," Sarah said, patting Max's flank. "He's a good boy. Aren't you, Max?" Max barked once. Loudly, the Yolanthian ribbon serpent went rigid and fell limp in its owner's arms. Following her came Diego, with a squat, muscular beast that walked with the rolling gait of a predator. Its eyes gleamed with intelligence and calculation. Its name tag read Luna, and unlike Max, Luna didn't bark. She just watched. Next came Mei Lin with a wriggling, hyperactive creature in her hood. "This is Bandit," she said. "He's a ferret." "Is that a juvenile predator larva?" hissed a Frelk in panic. "No, he's fully grown. He just likes to steal things. Don't let him near shiny stuff." Jackson entered last, carrying what looked like a cross between a small lion and a sentient pillow. The enormous feline perched on his shoulder and surveyed the room with bored disinterest. "This is General Fluff. He's the real danger here." The silence was palpable. The alien students had not prepared for this. S.H. Tari could only stare, his mandibles frozen mid-click. These weren't harmless empathy bugs or light-talker reptiles. These were apex predators, domesticated apex predators. As pets, the humans sat calmly, their companions, lounging at their feet or grooming themselves. A new Varkian tentacle raised shakily. "Excuse me," it whispered. "Did you tame those?" Jackson leaned back and smirked. "Tame? Nah. We made M family." S.H. Tari stared at the humans and their monstrous companions, and for the first time in years, he doubted the wisdom of cross-cultural education. Teeth, claws, and wagging tails. From a story, when Deathworlders brought their companions to class, aliens were horrified. To the human students, it was just another day at school. To the rest of the class, it was a diplomatic incident in slow motion. Professor S.H. Tari stood frozen at the front of the classroom, his sensory antennae stiff with tension. His black eyes tracked Max, the German shepherd, as the canine sniffed curiously at a floating jelly creature gently pulsing along the floor. "Please," S.H. Tari finally managed. "All companion animals must remain within a 1-meter radius of their assigned human. For safety." "Got it," Sarah chirped, tugging lightly on Max's leash. "Heel, buddy." Max obediently turned back to her side and sat with military precision, tail thumping against the floor. A few aliens flinched at the sound. One is something about shockwave predators. On the far side of the room, Luna, Diego's pit bull, had settled protectively in front of him, watching everyone like a bodyguard. The moment a curious avian student stepped too close, she let out a low growl. Not hostile, but firm. The bird-like student froze. "That one emits warnings," it whispered, backing away. "Luna's just being cautious," Diego said, offering an awkward smile. "She's all bark unless someone's being a jerk." General Fluff, Jackson's Maine Coon, had climbed to the top of a suspended projector unit and sprawled across it like a furry warlord surveying his territory. His amber eyes followed anything that moved, including S.H. Tari himself. Bandit the ferret had vanished. "Mei-Lin," S.H. Tari asked with growing alarm, "where is your companion?" Mei-Lin looked around. "He was just here a second ago." A sharp chirping sound erupted from the back of the room, followed by sparks. Bandit shot out of an open console vent, holding a small cluster of wires in his mouth, like a trophy. He dove back into Mei-Lin's bag before she could react. Several alien students ducked behind their desks. One of the mollusks deployed its shell reflexively. "Bandit!" Mei-Lin scolded, rummaging in her bag. "We talked about this." "Is that a sabotage instinct?" a student stammered. "No," Mei-Lin said sheepishly. "He just likes chewing electronics." S.H. Tari twitched. "Miss Mei-Lin, companion containment now." She nodded and zipped the ferret into a mesh-lined pouch. Bandit hissed once in protest, then curled up to nap. There was an uneasy silence. S.H. Tari attempted to continue the lesson. "As we were discussing the evolutionary paths of interspecies symbiosis, you will note that most companion species across the Concord demonstrate traits of emotional support, cooperative nesting, or empathic linkage." Wham! Max lunged toward the window and barked furiously at a passing maintenance drone. The sound echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. A glass beaker cracked from shock. The drone fled. Half the class screamed. Sarah tugged Max back. "He hates drones." "Sorry. Is it trying to assert territorial dominance over technology?" someone whispered. "Not really," Sarah replied. "He thinks they're sky rats." S.H. Tari felt his claws dig into his lectern. "Perhaps we should postpone the lesson." Suddenly, the Falcon arrived. The last human student, a quiet woman named Tala, strolled and wearing a thick leather glove on one arm. On that glove perched a sleek, sharp-eyed bird of prey, feathers gleaming with iridescence, talons clicking with each subtle shift. "This is Raz," she said calmly, offering no further explanation. Raz spread his wings wide and let out a high-pitched cry that echoed across the room. Every alien pet in the classroom either froze or fled under tables. One even sprayed a defense gland involuntarily, releasing a pink mist that made half the room gag. The falcon blinked slowly, unimpressed. I must ask, Sachtari croaked, struggling for composure. Are all of your Earth companion animals so aggressive? Not aggressive, Talus said. Just confident. Sarah grinned. They're good at reading people, too. Max won't even bark unless he senses tension. Max barked again. The entire class froze. Sorry, Sarah added. He just hates awkward silence. The humans laughed. No one else did. One brave student, a Slanari named Kill, whose species resembled upright horned frogs, raised a trembling hand. I do not understand, Kill croaked. You live on a planet where all life fights to survive, and you invite predators into your homes. Jackson leaned back in his seat, resting his hands behind his head. Sure, but we don't think of them as predators. They're family. We raise them, train them, earn their trust. They guard our homes, Mei Lin added. They help us hunt, work, even heal. They don't just protect us, Diego said, rubbing Luna's ears. They choose us, and we choose them back. Sachtari felt something twist in his thorax. To him, it defied reason. Every species he knew feared predators, avoided them. But humans? They adopted them. And now, those predators sat obediently at their feet, staring at the alien students with expressions that might be curiosity or hunger. The class was quiet for the remainder of the session. No one approached the humans. No one dared approach the pets. By the end of the hour, one fact had become clear. The Deathworlders had brought their companions to class, and they were horrifying. The Deathworld legacy. From a story, when Deathworlders brought their companions to class, aliens were horrified. After the chaos of Companion Day, Professor Sachtari called for an emergency curriculum adjustment. The topic for the next session, Deathworld domestication, an evolutionary case study. It was, in his view, the only logical step forward. The alien students needed context. The humans needed explaining. As the class gathered, the atmosphere was tense, but calmer than before. The humans had left their animals in the habitat wing, under strict containment. Still, several alien students glanced nervously at their human classmates, as though any of them might start barking or growling at any moment. Sachtari activated the hollow display at the front of the room. A globe appeared, spinning slowly. Sol 3, designated Earth, he began. Class 12 Deathworld. Notable for volatile tectonics, extreme climate variation, high radiation exposure, and the presence of multiple apex predator species, both terrestrial and aquatic. The display zoomed in on images, lightning storms, volcanic eruptions, great beasts mid-hunt, swarms of insects. One slide showed a giant bear roaring atop a snowy ridge. Another, a venomous snake coiled around a tree branch. There were floods, wildfires, sharks. Gasps rippled across the class. Sachtari continued, voice tight. And yet, intelligent life emerged. Bipedal mammals with no natural armor, fragile skeletons, and exposed organs. He turned toward the humans. You. Jackson leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. You make it sound like we cheated. No, Sachtari replied. You adapted, and I struggled to comprehend how. Tala raised a hand. Through cooperation. Through bonds. Sachtari tilted his head. Elaborate. She nodded. On Earth, surviving alone was nearly impossible. We had to rely on one another. And we realized early that other creatures, smarter ones, could help. The hollow shifted. Images of early humans appeared, crouching by fires, with wolves circling nearby. Then scenes of dogs hunting beside humans, herding livestock, guarding homes. Mei Lin spoke next. We didn't tame them by force. We formed relationships, mutual benefit. We gave them food and shelter. They gave us loyalty, protection. Diego added, it wasn't just about survival. It was trust. That's why dogs and cats aren't just animals to us. They're family. Sachtari frowned. You bonded with creatures designed for violence. And taught them peace, Jackson replied. That's the point. The room was quiet as the implications settled in. A Yolanthian student named KLA raised a translucent limb. My people never domesticated predators. We raised silk grazers, peaceful herd beasts. We found the idea of training something dangerous repugnant. You're not alone, S.H. Tari said. Among the Concord, over 90% of domesticated species are herbivores or passive feeders. The human method is unique. But it works, Sarah said. Max would die for me without hesitation. So would Luna. And we do the same for them. An uneasy hush followed. To many species present, the concept of dying for a non-sapient creature, or even another person, was unthinkable. Do you form emotional links with these companions? S.H. Tari asked cautiously. Absolutely, Mei Lin said. Some of us grieve for them harder than we grieve for people. Tala nodded. Because they give us unconditional loyalty. In a world full of chaos, they're constant. S.H. Tari cycled through more images. Cats curled on laps. Dogs sleeping beside children. Ferrets tunneling into couch cushions. Falcons perched on gloves, scanning the sky. Your species turned predators into partners, he said softly. Weapons into guardians. Wild instincts into loyalty. Not always perfectly, Jackson admitted. Some animals can't be tamed. Some shouldn't be. But when it works, it's beautiful. Kill, the frog-like Slanari, raised a hand again. But how do you know they won't turn on you? Diego shrugged. We don't. That's the risk. But trust doesn't mean certainty. It means choosing to believe in the bond. That perhaps more than anything shook the room. Most Concord species bred caution into their cultures. Risk was unacceptable. Bonds were logical, measured, often contractual. But humans? They leapt into the unknown. They befriended what others fled from. They stared into sharp teeth and wagging tails and sock in. S.H. Tari deactivated the display. This lesson was enlightening. Disturbing but enlightening. He turned to the class. We may never fully understand the human affinity for danger. But I now believe it is not born of recklessness but resilience. Jackson grinned. Hey, that's our whole species in a sentence. As the students filed out, some of the alien students offered tentative smiles. A few even asked if they could visit the companion habitat. They weren't ready to trust the animals. But maybe they could start trusting the humans who love them. Bonds beyond biology. From a story, when Deathworlders brought their companions to class, aliens were horrified. The companion habitat wing had been under observation for 3 days. Alien students approached in groups, hesitant, curious, still a little fearful. They stayed behind transparent barriers at first, observing from a distance. Inside, the human animals lounged, played, napped. They were not monsters. They were different. Sarah's German shepherd, Max, would perk up and wag his tail every time someone walked by, pressing his nose to the glass and barking happily. The sound still made some flinch, but one Yolanthian student had returned several times just to watch him wag his tail. Luna, Diego's pit bull, had become an unexpected favorite, stoic, protective, and surprisingly gentle with the smaller, more fragile visitors. She accepted treats through the feeding hatch and leaned into the glass when someone spoke softly to her. Bandit, the ferret, had predictably caused a minor lockdown after slipping through an air vent and appearing inside a Frelk student's satchel mid-lecture. Malin apologized profusely. The ferret apologized by stealing the student's datapad again and hiding it inside a coffee machine. Still, the Frelk returned the next day with treats. Perhaps the strangest transformation was General Fluff. Initially dismissed as an oversized furball, the Maine Coon had steadily gained a following. Alien students would gather near his perch as he groomed himself, staring with bored regality at his audience. One student, a Nuvarkian, began sketching him obsessively, convinced he was some form of divine entity. Professor S.H. Tari, watching all this unfold, struggled to reconcile it with everything he'd known. Professor, Jackson said one morning, meeting him outside the enclosure. You wanted to see me? Yes, S.H. Tari replied. He gestured to the viewing area, where several students were watching Max do tricks on Sarah's command. They seemed less horrified. "They're learning," Jackson said. "So are we." S.H. Tari's mandibles clicked softly. "You could have brought harmless creatures. Birds. Fish. Why bring these?" Jackson thought for a moment. "Because they're part of us. We didn't want to hide who we are just to make things easier. Even if it frightened others." "Especially then," Jackson said quietly. "Trust starts with truth. And the truth is, we don't just survive death worlds. We bring others with us. And we protect them." S.H. Tari was silent. Later that day, a bold Yolanthian student named Kla approached Sarah in the habitat wing. "May I touch him?" she asked, nodding toward Max. Sarah smiled. "Sure. Hold out your hand. Let him sniff first." With a trembling limb, Kla extended her arm. Max sniffed once, twice, then licked her fingers. Kla's bioluminescent skin pulsed bright green in astonishment. "He accepted me." Sarah nodded. "You're part of the pack now." One by one, the barriers broke. The Slanari student, who once feared Luna, now sat beside her while she rested her head on his lap. A pair of Frelk students built an enrichment maze for Bandit. A Yolanthian initiated a formal spiritual companion ceremony for General Fluff, who yawned throughout the proceedings. Tala's falcon, Raz, still intimidated everyone, but even he earned a kind of reverent respect. His power wasn't a threat. It was awe-inspiring. Majestic, alien students now described him as a symbol of focus, precision, and death held in check. On the final day of the term, S.H. Tari stood before the class once more. This exchange was unprecedented. What began in fear ended in understanding. "I commend your courage, humans and non-humans alike." He turned toward the humans. "Your companions are unlike any we have encountered. They reflect not just the nature of your world, but the nature of your hearts." He paused, then added, "Ferocious, loyal, and fiercely protective." Jackson smirked. "You say that like it's a compliment." "It is," Sage Tari replied. As students rose to leave, Kill, the amphibious Slanari, stopped Jackson at the door. "I've decided to apply for the next Earth immersion program," Kill said, a little shakily. "Assuming I survive." Jackson laughed. "You will. Just don't pet the raccoons." "What's a raccoon?" "You'll see." They walked off together, laughing. Behind them, Max barked once, just once. The sound still echoed, but now it made heads turn in amusement, not fear. Deathworlders had brought their companions to class, and the galaxy would never be the same.